So, on this Thanksgiving Eve, I have to ask a question. And I'm sure a lot of people will probably know the answer. But when it comes to Sonic the Hedgehog, why is it that SEGA is kind of reluctant to let romance be, well, in a way, acknowledged in the games? I mean, we are kind of seeing it now, like with Frontiers. Some people are pointing out there is some acknowledgments of, something between Sonic and Amy. But besides that, why doesn't Sega allow it to happen? I mean, Nintendo, in a sense, kind of lets it be acknowledged, between, let's say, Peach and Mario and Luigi and Daisy, if you will, and even Pauline and Mario, and even Rosalinda and Mario, depending on, what canon of Super Mario Brothers you're into. But again, the question is, why doesn't Sega allow Sonic to have that as well? And I think it's because of the fact that it would kind of interfere with that cool factor that Sonic is known to have, that free-spirited cool factor. I mean, for those of us that have played Sonic Frontiers all the way through, and believe me, you can find a lot of the cutscenes here on YouTube that are basically spliced together into a movie. Sonic is shown at the end to not only hang out with his friends and all that, but, even though they, all board the tornado to fly off to their next adventure or wherever, we have all of them basically acknowledging that they're going to do separate things. I mean, Tails telling Sonic, hey, the next time you see me, you'll barely recognize me. And Amy saying and wondering, what Cream and Sticks are up to and everything. And maybe they can make an adventure out of being together and all that. Basically, that one scene at the end kind of indicates that, yeah, the friends hang out, they have adventures together, but they all also go their separate ways, and stay connected. Which, basically, kind of ties into Sega's thing about Sonic being a free spirit. But here's the thing, though. They should realize, Sega, and Sega of America, give them credit. Sega of America and Europe, they pretty much knew. Sega of America, Sega of Europe, Sega of Australia, all the different continental Sega regions, that have Sega, headquartered, there or in their countries in some capacity, outside of Japan, at least they understand. They get it. They understand. They get that, hey, you got to do more with these characters than just, what you write them down to do, or what you pretty much feel that they need to do, and stuff like that. And Japan has to, realize, and it looks like little by little they are, but not necessarily as quickly as they should. Japan needs to realize that, hey, a franchise like Sonic does need to be expanded on. It does need to, really have more equipped to it to thrive. And thankfully, they are kind of letting that, be acknowledged a bit by letting the American team of Sonic, do the writing for the story. Basically hire the people, within, the Western Hemisphere of the world to write the stories. And that's why I think when you look at Frontiers and you look at those moments that people say are between Sonic and Amy, people will point out that you see a hint that maybe there is something more than just a friendship. But that's just their opinion. But I think the other reason, honestly, Sega never liked romance or never allowed romance entirely to be, part of the Sonic franchise not even hinted at as much. I mean, the closest they have allowed it to be hinted at was Sonic 06 with Elise. And yeah, we kind of saw where that went, right? You know, we kind of saw where that went. I mean, heck, and you know, and here's the thing. Japan shouldn't, you know, be against it at all, because honestly, they kind of allowed it in the OVA, the 1996 and 1999 OVA, you know, between Sarah and Sonic. But still, you know, whatever the reasoning is, you know, they, you know, like I said, they need to realize that if they're going to have this franchise really thrive and be more than what it is now, especially going into its 30th anniversary, you know, not just this year, but next year with Sonic 3 and all the other Sonic stuff that came out 30 years ago, you know, they have to let it, you know, they have to let it really grow. They have to let it be more than what, you know, Yuji Naga, who, by the way, ended up being arrested and all that. Yuji Naga and some of the other original creators, you know, originally intended it to be. You know, they need to allow it to be, you know, more than what it is. And anybody knows that a successful franchise, whether it's an original IP or it's adapted and based on, you know, an established IP from another media, they know that one of the main ways you make that happen is you allow romance to, you know, be a major part, especially between the main character and whoever the love interest is, whether it's another character from the IP or somebody original. You know, you allow that romance to become, you know, pretty much more than what people would expect, more than a crush and all that, or more than a friendship. And you know, that's the one issue that hopefully over time, starting maybe with Frontiers, that SEGA of Japan wakes up and realizes, yeah, maybe it's not a bad thing to let it happen. But as I was saying before, I kind of got off track and went in that direct, we talked about that a little bit more. I think the reason, you know, they don't allow it is mainly because, well, very similar to perhaps the reason the likes of Ian Flynn, you know, just got sick and tired of writing romance in the comic. You know, they probably felt it was just too complicated. You know, or they, well, didn't feel like it. Well, but let me correct myself. It's not that they felt like it was too complicated. They basically felt like, you know, if they were to do romance and pair Sonic up with somebody, you know, it wouldn't be a satisfying pairing, if you know what I mean. In other words, the pairing that Sonic would end up in, you know, wouldn't be a pairing that a lot of people would, you know, be for. A lot of people would, you know, probably, you know, accept and everything, if you know what I mean. I mean, honestly, for example, you know, if they decided, okay, we're going to make Sonic and Amy official, yeah, a lot of fans would be cool with it, but then you'd have other fans saying, no, Sonic should be with somebody else, like Sally. Or Sonic should be, believe it or not, maybe with Bunny, or something like that. Any of the characters that were made on the western side of the world, you know, for Saturday, they'd be like, yeah, you know, he should be with one of them. It makes more sense. And that the only reason, you know, they're pairing him up with Amy is just like him, you know, she's a hedgehog. You know, just like he is, you know, she's a hedgehog. And, you know, that's the only reason you're pairing her up with him. And, you know, things like that. But, you know, but honestly, it shouldn't, you know, SEGA shouldn't be worried about who they would pair him up with. You know, that's the truth. I mean, they were behind Sonic X, right? The final season, what did they do for a romance deal? They put Tails with Cosmo. And then in Sonic Boom, they put Tails with Zoe. So, yeah, they had no problem doing romance. in the Sonic shows, or in Sonic shows that they have a hand in and all that, when it comes to Tails. But when it's like with Sonic, it's like, yeah, what's the issue? He could still be a free, he could still be a free spirit and everything. But why not at least let him have somebody he can always, come back to when the opportunity presents itself? It just, to me, it just doesn't make sense. But again, I could probably understand, just like with Ian Flynn, why they wouldn't do it. They basically probably feel it would be too complicated of an issue to address to make a reality, and probably believe, like Ian Flynn, that they would make a decision that wouldn't satisfy everybody. I mean, Ian obviously was going to go with Sonic and Sally, but did tease at times, especially during the Iron Dominion arc, he would potentially go with Sonic and Amy, or at least tease that possibility. But we don't know if that's true or not. But the fact is, again, I don't see what the issue is. SEGA Japan, being reluctant to let, romance be a part of the Sonic media, the games and all that. Mostly the games and stuff. At least hint at, hey, there is something between these two characters kind of deal. That's not too much to ask. At least hint at the fact that, hey, this character kind of has a thing for that character and vice versa. It's not that big of a deal. If you could do it in projects that you kind of have a hand in, like I mentioned, then you shouldn't have a problem doing it in the games. But maybe it's because of what they did with Elise in Sonic 06 that maybe caused them to kind of back off from it. I don't know. But if I'm SEGA Japan, and I realize a lot of the storytelling is now being done for my games on the Western side of things, maybe I should be more considerate, with the idea of letting romance kind of trickle in a little bit with the games and stuff to kind of really help expand, the lore of Sonic, as an IP and stuff. So, that's what I should do if I'm SEGA. I should at least, take into consideration that, the stories are now being written by people on the Western side of the hemisphere, and that maybe because of that, I should be more willing to maybe let them add a little bit of romance in there between the characters, and allow that to help build the lore of the franchise from a story perspective, overall. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Comment down below. Love to hear from each and every one of you on this. I'm about home, guys, but give me your thoughts. How do you feel about this? And until next time, I'm out.